right, world. My name is Byron Benton, and I want to welcome you to the Corner Office Chronicles podcast. I have a special guest here. He is a masterful business coach, executive coach, and I look forward. I spoke with him once. I want the world to hear his story. I would like to introduce you to Vladimir. How you doing, sir? Please introduce yourself.
Thanks, Byron. Thanks for that wonderful introduction. I'm Vladimir Baranov. I'm a business coach for technology founders. Thank you for having me.
Oh, no problem. Thank you very much. You inspired me so much that I want to speak with you again. I think the world should hear it. So here we are right now. Let me ask you, what got you into being an executive business
Yeah,
coach?
so it's a good question. I think in a retrospect, it became a sort of a journey of figuring out how to do the most impact with my work. I started out as an electrical engineer, computer scientist doing individual work, migrated from large companies to smaller ones, from finance into wealth management. Had some experience there. So I realized that doing my work in a smaller company feels like much more impactful because you see the outcome and the results of everything you're doing right away. But then I shifted from one industry to another. I went from fintech to aerospace because I felt that's where a lot of world's problems are being solved. Spent there 4 years. Figured out that there, while impact was there, it's a little bit narrow and only a small niche of population is benefiting from that. And that's where it led me to start working with other founders as part of my business coaching career to help as many as I can to start their own businesses and to be better at running their current ones, because I felt that my impact and my work multiplies other people's work and creates a bigger impact. So that's how I ended up where I am now.
Okay, so and you kind of touched on a little bit. Why startups specifically? You think when you think of startups, you think of the that's the bulk of the American economy. America's mostly built on the back, so smaller companies, but larger companies as well. Why did you target the smaller companies?
Yeah, I think I like the energy of the founders. While it's very important for medium and large companies to exist, I think it's something around the amount of risk that individuals take when they start their own company. I want to be associated with. I want to be related to those people. I want to be with them as much as possible. That got me interested in them.
Okay, so we think about business leaders. How can we get them to reach their full potential? Because I'm sure you've seen tons of things. You've seen people that you might have to tell things to multiple times. You've seen other people that just can't get it and they just don't get it at all. And you see others that may get it at all. What specifically uh, can we do to help the small business leaders?
Yeah. So I think from coaching perspective, our general role is enablement and guidance. But when you're talking about specifics, it has to start with the person. The person really, really has to want it. Like you have to have greed, you have to have commitment, you have to have the strive for something better than yourself when you wake up tomorrow. And if you don't have it, there's nothing really anybody can do to you in order to make it better. It's like you can lead the horse to the water, but you cannot make the horse drink. So first of all, it's absolutely has to be a desire to want and change and to experiment. And once I think it's there, and person tries to continually becoming a better version of themselves, now they might not become something that they want overnight, but step by step, minute by minute, day by day, become better versions of themselves, which will again lead them to be much better at business or whatever their endearments are.
Okay, okay. So let's think when we think of business leaders, do you think the best ones have mentorship? What? Because I think so. You mentioned me a couple times, and you made me you challenged the way that I think. Do you think that business mentorship is very I guess quintessential for the average business owner? And in what ways
Yeah.
do you think that can help a business owner?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely important. How can you succeed without it? Yes, but it's like doing physics experiments without reading a textbook. Will you eventually succeed at replicating somebody's experiment? Have been trying something on your own? Absolutely. Like you're smart enough. It's just the learning curve is going to be much longer than if you would spend some time with a mentor who has been there before, who has encountered similar challenges, who knows different approaches, who knows other people who have encountered this perhaps in more aligned way that you're encountering. It's almost like outsourced experience, right? You're paying somebody to tell me like, how did you cross this bridge? Did you use a rope? Did you use an axe? Did you just walk? Did you take a car? How did you do that? Right? And then you can take a mentorship or coaching approach to how to solve it for it. So like mentoring would be somebody like, hey, I've done something like this in my past, maybe perhaps it will work for you. Coaching would be leading through questions like, who else do you know who have done it, who you can ask, or like what kind of step would you take the first time, what kind of shoes would you wear yourself, where you also get a little bit more coachy driven development. So it depends on what preference the person has. But to answer your question, I think it's absolutely paramount to have some sort of mentoring. And if we're talking about what kind of mentors people usually should be looking for, it's somebody who has done it before, but perhaps maybe 3, 4 years ahead of you. If they're a little bit 1 year ahead, they maybe have not arrived to the same destination from which they can actually retrospect what they have done and provide some lessons for you. And somebody who's been there like maybe 10, 20 years ago, maybe a little bit too removed from the place of action and maybe are not familiar with all the trends at your level to be the most helpful.
Okay, okay. So do you think that it helps businesses scale faster? Does it cut back on the, I guess, amount of mistakes and the amount of time that it takes to get up and running?
It definitely cuts down an amount of tears that you have to cry as you are doing entrepreneurship because, you know, it's as difficult as it is. It definitely will lead you to some place of craziness. And past patterns are not necessarily future patterns, but they're very similar. So somebody who observes your patterns will be able to tell you, hey, I don't think you should be doing it this way. I should be doing it that way. And with that comes also really great learning opportunity.
Okay, okay. The thing about mentoring, uh, or maybe an intrinsic value of mentoring is when I mentor people, and maybe you feel this way too. When you speak to people, you also kind of speak to yourself as well because you kind of going over the same information versus someone that doesn't work certain muscles. Being a mentor, you teach people every day. So, do you think that it actually kind of gives value to you as well, and you get to reiterate what you know at times as well from going over information?
So I think there's a saying that you become much better at what you do when you start teaching it.
Yeah.
Because innately we have experience, right? We have experience, let's say, of riding a bicycle or
Mhm.
crossing a street or driving a car. But once we start explaining those things, which we haven't taught before, we realize that we actually do not have step-by-step instructions of how to mentor and teach somebody something to somebody, right? Oh, just keep your balance. Like, what exactly kind of instruction is that, right? Like, you feel it, but you cannot really teach it because
Mhm.
the methodology needs to be very different, right? You might want to start out with a person becoming aware of their balance. Like, hey, can you stand on one foot? Can you stand on another foot? Can you shift the weight back and forth? Okay, now you're ready to actually sit on the bike, maybe not ready to ride, right? So there's a lot more steps in between our innate understanding, our natural understanding of what we know, and how we actually teach the things that we know about. So to answer your question, is like absolutely. As I am uh, going through either mentoring or coaching session, I'm learning also a lot about myself, about the person who I'm working with, and how the best to teach the material that I'm covering.
Okay, okay. So let me ask you, uh, you for instance, you're very good at mentoring. You know how to get down to the psychology of it and things of that nature. Have you had mentors before, or is it second nature to you, or
Well, as I mentioned before, I'm not really great at inventing physics experiments. I think what I've learned is that one thing, so my background is engineering, right? And a lot of education for engineers teaches engineers like you gotta solve it from your own head. And while it is great advice to get certification as engineer, it's really not great advice if you're trying to learn something quick. Because a lot of information, if you're learning and trying to learn something quick, it's not online, it's not anywhere else, it's in other people's heads. And in order to get that information, you actually have to go and talk to them. So to answer your question, like, have I had mentors? So I think I did not have more like labeled mentors. I think I just went to people and ask questions instead of like instead of spending hours and hours and hours researching certain topic, I would just think about it. Who might know the most about this and who can teach me in the shortest amount of time on a specific topic? I wouldn't say that I probably had long standing relationships with mentors. I think my understanding about mentorship developed over a much longer period of time for me to eventually benefit from it.
Okay, okay. So let's say when you mentor a team or a leader, how do you gauge where to start? Because I'm sure it's different with
Mm,
every particular person.
yeah,
What works for this particular person, another person
yeah,
might be more advanced or less advanced. How would you
yeah,
break it down on where you should
yeah.
start?
Yeah, those are good questions. So one thing which might help you with perspective is that humans are not cars, right? Because with cars, we can take a look and we know exactly what's broken, what needs to be
Mhm.
fixed. We go to the shelf, we take the part, we replace it. Now it's working the way it was originally designed. In coaching or mentoring, like I have no idea what this person was designed to do. Neither probably sometimes is the person. So we kind of have to start from the start. It's like, tell me about your background. Tell me what you have done so far in life. What have you learned? But then we also have to start with desires. Like cars do not have desires, right? Like any mechanic or product does not have desires. So you don't have to ask those questions. But every human has their own desires, their own vision, their own anticipation, their own, let's say, salary or revenues or products or impact they want to make in the world. And that's where we start. So we start with the background and that vision of the future. And then my responsibility as a coach or as a mentor, try to figure out what the steps that the mentee or coachee needs to take in between, either driven from their own context or if I'm in a mentoring capacity, if I can bring in something from my own experience, how they can cross that gap, right? So they're in a state now with the experiences that they have. What do they need to do to get to the place which is closer to their vision? And is vision something that they really want to be at? Like after 3 or 4 or 5, 6 months of mentoring coaching, an individual might come back and say, like, I've tried this and I actually realized I don't want it. Right. I've tried all these things that which lead me to the place which I wanted to be. And then we have to change the vision because now we have gotten data. Right. The more activity you do, the more data you generate, the much better you can assess whether you want it or not. Right. If you're visiting a restaurant you've never been before, you really cannot tell whether it's not a good or not until you taste the food or you taste at least like dishes. But if you've tasted like 4 dishes out of 5 and all of them were bad, you can pretty much conclude the fifth dish is probably also going to be bad. Um, and the same thing here, like where we're trying to reach some sort of destination, we don't necessarily have to land on the final milestone of that destination. We can figure out how we can try it upon ourselves a little bit and see where it's the right place that we want to go into. And again, it's all driven by the client. And so in a sense, the client has to decide whether it's the right direction for them to go or not.
Okay, okay, okay. Good answer, good answer. Let's say, and I know that we're trying to get people from here to here, but is there a certain point where we're trying to get the best leaders to, like maybe to be the best speakers in the world, great orators,
Mm,
or maybe to be able to be able to give direction to a team without
yeah.
second guessing themselves? Where does the at what point does a person know that they're a good leader? What are some
Yeah.
of the traits?
So I don't think there's such a thing as a universal leader. I think there are certain leadership characteristics which are appropriate for each individual context. Like somebody, let's say, who is a team leader of, let's say, a captain of an NBA team or a captain of a soccer
Yeah.
team, they have their own objectives, their own goals. And if you take the same skills and you place somebody, let's say, as a leader of an orchestra, they might not be as effective because it's very different cultural context and very different ways that people respect each other, right? Same thing if you take somebody who's a great politician who's great at talking, but you put them in the trenches with the soldiers and they're not, they're absolutely useless. Um, and but then you reverse and you take somebody who is a soldier and maybe a great general, but you take them to political stage again, they might not be able to lead a country or Congress in that capacity because it's just again very different context. I think there are some skills like communication and honor and listening, which are critical to leaders in order to be in charge. But I still think it's very much context driven.
Okay, okay. How important is a good work-life balance
Mm,
for a leader, not only for his business sense, but also his health? Sometimes we all need a break at some point. Some people can do it
Yeah,
all day. Other people, they it's like a songwriter. They might not write a song for 4 years.
yeah,
But when they write that one song, it's that hit song versus somebody that does it every day. They might not, stumble upon greatness. In that sense, what do you think is the work-life balance,
yeah.
for business and health as well?
Yeah, I think I want to go back to the context. I think everybody's different. It's kind of like you need to understand what your body needs, what you need, what your family needs, what are your priorities. Because if you're in your young 20s, you got no family and you desire to like hit the vision as much as possible, maybe you can
Yeah.
just sleep for 5 hours a day for weeks on end until you reach your destination and then you can relax. But again, it's kind of driven by priority. But one thing I know is that if you do not give yourself breaks, if you do not give yourself rest, then brain does not have enough time to reconstitute or reconstruct the things that you're thinking about or like relax the brain muscles, however you want to call them, to reset to the place where they can start thinking. Um, my readings have showed me that there are two parts of the brain. There is the conscious and subconscious does a lot of processing when the conscious is not working. And sometimes you just need to give it time and go for a walk, go for shopping, or do something outside of whatever activity you're doing in order for it to start constructing much better models of the things that you're trying to solve. I am not in a position to tell people like, hey, go ahead and rest. Again, it's like everybody has different needs. Some people need to sleep 16 hours a day. Some people need to sleep three.
16.
But in the end, it's all optimized for the balance of what are your what achievements you want to have, right? So let's say if hypothetically there's a war and there's an enemy invading, I don't think there's a lot of room for the life work balance there. But in other considerations, it's again driven very much by the client priorities.
Okay, okay. Let me ask you. You've been in this for a while, and sometimes, what I've seen from mentoring, sometimes you never know where that good piece of advice can come from. Some might come from an unlikely source. Maybe somebody you're
Yes.
teaching, they give you a different perspective on something, and also different mentors give provoking, thought-provoking information as well. What are some of the most important lessons you've learned from a mentor or a mentee? And it could be more than one. Maybe it can be three,
Yeah.
five. Anything that comes to the top
Yeah.
of your head, some of the life lessons that you learned that have impacted you?
Yeah. I think a big lesson that I had to learn is how much listening is important to creating a relationship and coming to a solution that works. Uh, at least as an engineer, I have a priority to kind of jump to solutions as soon as possible, just to optimize my time and being the most effective. But unfortunately, what that prevents us is actually listening deeply to the full context of the problem, to the full context of the individual that we're working with, in order to provide the solution that makes sense in their context, right? Because I can teach somebody how to catch tuna in a pond, but really they're trying to catch shark in the ocean. While I'll be satisfied that I shared something, but like it's not going to be relevant advice to somebody who I'm talking to. So I'd say listening and fully understanding context and asking clarifying questions, I feel it's the most important thing that I've learned as a leader and a manager.
Okay. So let me ask you, when you mentor people, how important is it for you to actually get to know this particular person as a person? I imagine you have to know this person to find out what their strengths and their weaknesses are. Is that part of the game plan as well? Asking these specific type questions
Yeah.
just to find out the personality of a person.
Yeah. I think a lot of questions on that topic relate to gap assessment. So as I mentioned, like we talk about
Okay.
like trying to figure out where the person currently is, like what's their background, what their skills, what have they lived so far, and what are the gaps between that and the role they want to play in the future. What are the skills are missing? What experience are missing? What other exposures can we introduce in order for them to kind of grow through that? So in that context, we can identify all of those items because if let's say if somebody is trying to become better mathematician but they suck at singing, there is no really need to assess any of their thinking capability. Not that I'm capable of that, um, but we need to focus on the things that are priority for them and are a priority for them crossing the gaps, getting to their vision.
Okay, okay. And this is one of my last questions. I know we have to wrap up. You're busy man, you have stuff to do. Do you think, and this is kind of like a question, the chicken or the egg, which one comes first? In business, I think, in entrepreneurship, the question, if you Google it, a lot of times comes up, are great leaders born or are they made? In my head, I think that maybe it's a little bit of both. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, I do think we have some innate abilities, but that doesn't necessarily means that that's going to
Yes.
put someone ahead of someone that that works a lot and experiments and is in the Call of Duty.
Yeah.
That's just my opinion. What's your opinion?
Yeah. I think it's both, but I'm also leaning towards there's also I think a third one. Um it's the desirability of becoming a leader. That is part of being made, but I think there's something where somebody wants to become greater than they are right now,
Yeah.
which makes them greater a leader because they are teaching themselves. Um I have so I guess being made is probably more effective than being born. There are absolutely naturally born leaders, but in the end, they still have to learn somewhere the software for our brain with the hardware that
Mhm.
we get to become much better, right? Because like um, a lot of great leaders learn from others, and again, it's really hard to innately do it on themselves. Perhaps they're born with much better listening hardware, or much better observing hardware, but all of that has to still be directed at others doing some great things in order for them to learn. We're all learning machines. And I think the more kind of learning we do, the better leaders we become. So I'd say it's 80% made and 20% born.
Okay, okay. All right, all right. So let's say if people want to get in touch with you, the business leaders of the world, uh, it could be someone young in their 20s right now, or I mean nowadays some of the 20-year-olds taking over the world. You think about some of the companies,
Or
but
taking it up or taking it apart, however you think about it. Yeah.
well, to the next generation or from the current generation of people that want to get in touch with you and they want to be better leaders, how can they get in touch with
Yeah, that's a great question, Byron. So I have a special link on my website. If you go to humaninterfaces.co/podcast, they will be able to book a complimentary session. I'll be happy to listen to their growth objectives and see how we can help them.
you? Okay. Well, I want to personally thank you. We've spoken multiple times. Every time I speak with you, I learn something new. I can definitely tell that you are an expert at your craft. And I look forward to speaking with you again. I want to thank you very much for joining the podcast. Is there anything you want to tell to the future coaches that's coming along? You know, how can we get as good as you? How can we get as effective as you? Is it studying? Is it you know?
Mm. It's a good question, and I think I want to actually leave it with a question. Um, what do you want to end up as?
Yeah,
Who is that person who you want
yeah,
to be like most? Study their path. And
yeah.
that path is not necessarily going to be yours, but you're going to take a piece of it and implement it for you, which is the most appropriate. Then find another person who you think you're the path which you like. But then ask yourself in the end, after you learn from all these people, who do you want to become yourself? Just being creative, having a lot of money is not a good answer. Who do you want to become?
There you go. We both look into the camera. World. How we're going to end this particular podcast. Thank you very much for joining, sir. We really appreciate you. I look forward to speaking with you again very near future.